I will officially call this meeting of Bradford Island Restoration Advisory Board to order at 5:10. And I will do an official, do you guys want me to do an official roll call, or are we good?
Why don't we
I think
just
we're good.
call Sophia in and then go from there.
Okay, Sophia, are you present? Sophia, can you hear us?
Did we lose her? I'm looking for her.
Oh, she's still showing as a roll call.
Yep.
Kelly, Alicia, if you can try to confirm her that she's able to hear us via the chat, and then we can go ahead and get started just to respect everybody's time.
Okay.
All right. So Jordan, we've gone through.
Oh, my apologies there. I was talking and muted the entire time.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
Sorry. Let me hand it back over to you then.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and follow the normal procedure, and we'll jump into RAB business. And we'll start with approval of the minutes. I'll entertain any motions to approve the November 2024 RAB minutes.
Okay.
This is Pam. I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, Pam has made the motion. Carl has seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, this is Mitch Patton. Hey, I'm wondering, is there any way we can get the minutes from the last meetings and stuff any sooner than later type deal? It's been long enough. It's really hard to read through them and remember
we're
everything.
working to get those as soon as possible. It does take a little time to put them together, and then it is kind of difficult to prioritize this sometimes when we've got a lot of other stuff going on, but that's something that we're working on is pulling that backwards for folks.
Okay, that'd be great. Be helpful on my end anyhow.
Any other
Sophia?
discussion regarding the minutes?
Oh, sorry.
Not hearing any, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. I'm going to hand it over to the core. There were a couple of follow-up items from the November meeting that I'll let them respond to.
Great, thanks for that, Jordan. So I'm going to go through and provide some responses on all of these. Starting with there was a request for Dina Crosby, one of our partners at Oregon Health Authority, to provide a list of potential locations for large signs. And this is referring specifically to Bonneville resident fish advisory signs. Dana's confirmed to me that OHA has provided both multiple signs and print materials to Cascade Locks Marina, Port of Skamania. So that's for those two areas to distribute and install signs around their properties in different locations. OHA is actively working with the U.S. Forest Service to get some additional signs installed over at Eagle Creek. Dana did let me know that there is actually quite a few levels of approval at the Forest Service to do this at the specific location. Eagle Creek, for anyone not familiar, is a part of a national scenic area. So apparently that adds a lot of requirements and limitations on where they can install signs, how many, and all that kind of stuff. So Forest Service is still working through that. Some additional areas that OHA, or some additional partners that OHA has provided print materials to, includes Skyline Medical, Hood River Health Department, and Skamania Health Departments. And then there's, other locations that are still being worked. This is something we've talked about a few times, but a lot of these locations we talk about installing signs are private properties. And so, OHA is going through the process of following back up with these people, seeing if basically handshake agreements still hold up. But that's the list so far, and we can kind of continue to update that as additional progress is made. Moving on to the Bradford Island displays that are in the Oregon and Washington visitor centers at Bonneville Dam. So we actually found out since the last RAB meeting that the visitor centers were closed for the bulk of the winter, since I think it was like late November to mid-January, that they've been closed for remodeling. And so I'm looking to head out in the next week or so to site to see basically where those displays have landed in the visitor centers since they're remodeling, and then we can kind of go from there and ensuring that those are in very visible spots for the visitors to those centers. So not checking the box on that one just yet, but that's where we stand. Next item was to provide contact information for Washington Department of Health toxicologist to Dana Crosby. That's been completed. Next one down was to welcome Sophia to our RAB, and I believe I spelled that wrong, so sorry about that, Sophia. But Sophia has been provided the initial information for the RAB and is here attending with us today. And then the last item on this list is regarding the operating procedures for members' 2-year terms and if they would like to continue to serve. So what we've pulled out of our operating procedures is that we have allowances for open nominations. We say in the operating procedures 2 years or as needed. Nominations are approved by a majority vote at a meeting designated for nominee approval. So next meeting is in March, and that will be the end of 2 years for 5 of our members. That includes Christy, Jordan, Carl, Kate, and Andrea. So something we can do at our next meeting is we can have some time for open nomination and voting. If folks are interested in continuing to serve on the RAB, they can actually nominate themselves. And then if folks are interested in, at this point, in resigning from the RAB and ending their terms this coming March, we don't have very strict requests for that. We asked for either resignation at a meeting or resigning via writing to the co-chairs if that works for folks. We've also accepted verbal resignations as well, because we're understanding that for some folks, particularly tribal members, it's very culturally important to just honor a person's word. So verbal resignations are fine too.
We have a hand up, Megan.
Yep. Yeah, I see a hand up there. Go ahead. That's Rich.
Yeah,
Rich.
thanks, Megan. Rich Francis, EPA. I just want to, as a non-voting member of the RAB, I just want to encourage everyone that if you don't think that, if you feel like we were kind of spinning wheels here and that maybe you're not being heard, I can guarantee you that when we go back and we have our meetings, our technical meetings and management meetings, that the things that are discussed here in the RAB and the concerns that are brought forth by the community are front and center to our conversations there. So I just wanted to encourage everyone and let you know that, you are being heard and that those concerns are being carried forward. So I don't want to diminish, your work here and the volunteering that everyone does. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for adding that, Rich. Are there any questions over any of the points that I went over for our follow-up? Any questions from our RAB members? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Moving on to new business, we have no new business today. We do have a great presentation regarding our work in the Upland OU, or operable unit, excuse me. So we'll move right along to our project updates. We'll start with a brief update on Upland operable unit before moving into that presentation from Jacobs. So under the supplemental remedial investigation, we are working to finalize the work plan that we've been working with regulators and tribes. We've received their comments, and we do have some comments that we may not be able to resolve. As you know, previously, any comments that we're not able to resolve in the work plan between our agencies, the Corps will capture those in a memorandum for record, and that will all be included when that work plan is added to the administrative record and put out for the public. We have gotten some indication from some of our partners that they may be looking to go to an informal dispute process to address some of those comments. So where we are on that is we'll go through the informal dispute process together. And then at the resolution of that process, that's when we would be putting out the finalized work plan on the administrative record for the public. So there could be a little bit of delay on that. We'll continue to update that here. But the good news on that work plan is that we did get conditional approval for the field work to start in December of this past year. So conditional approval essentially means that EPA believes there's nothing significant that would alter our work out in the field, that we would be able to go ahead and get started without delaying the schedule any. For the non-time critical removal action, we are working on revising that document with regulator and tribal comments. And we've been putting together those responses to comments for regulators and tribes. We're looking to have those back later this month for their back check. And then after we finalize that document with regulators and tribes, we would be actually putting this particular document out for public review. This is one of the documents that under CERCLA has a required public review period. So this would mean the document would finish the review period with regulators and tribes, and then it would be posted for the public. There would be a minimum of 30 calendar days for the public to review. It can be a little bit longer if that means that comments would be due on like a weekend or something like that. Then sometimes we might push out that date by a few calendar days. But generally 30 calendar days for that review. During that time, the Corps would like to present on the contents of the engineering evaluation cost analysis. We'd like to provide that presentation to the RAB. So depending on the timing of finalizing the documents with regulators and tribes, that may mean that we'll be recommending an ad hoc meeting. We don't know exactly yet if we're going to recommend that, so we're going to be in touch after this meeting as we make progress on the engineering evaluation cost analysis. So we're asking RAB members, please watch out for emails from me so that we can have that dialogue together. Next, we will be going into talking a little further about the Upland OU SRI work plan. Before we leave this slide, any quick questions from our RAB members? Okay, let's go ahead to the next slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Jacobs. Jay, do we still have you? I don't hear you yet.
Okay.
I think I was muted. Sorry.
Okay, now we don't see your slides, Jay.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'll get back to it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had to unmute myself. So
Looks good.
All right, we see him.
yeah, there we go. Can you hear me all right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
I'm
Sounds
clear.
good. All right, thanks. Yeah. So this is Jay Wilburn. I'm the project manager with Jacobs. I was saying that we also have Gary Colgan on online here, and Gary's our senior hydrogeologist. So he'll be chiming in if there's some questions or some clarifications on the technical side of things. But yeah, kind of moving on from there, like Megan was indicating, we were able to get started on some of the supplemental remedial investigation, the SRI work for the Upland OU in December. So basically we completed some soil sampling and seep sampling in December. And then just actually at the 1st of January here, we started in with some monitoring well installation. But before we get into those details, just kind of a real kind of higher level refresher of the Upland OU. So there's 4 areas of potential concerns. We've got the landfill, AOPC, the sandblast area, the bulb slope, and the pistol range area. And so the SRI activities were pretty much focused on data gaps since the 2012 RI and then the recent groundwater sampling that had been completed, and in focusing on really on areas that are not really going to be specifically impacted by the non-time critical removal action. So what that means is basically we're kind of looking at investigation areas that are associated with the landfill, AOPC, and the sandblast area, AOPC. And but in addition to that, there were a couple other areas that are not formally part of the Upland OU historically, and so we're completed some soil investigations on the kind of the former road area, some of the old roads that were out there, to look to see if there was any concerns with PCBs or polychlorinated biphenyls and metals that could have been used for possibly oiling those roads. And then also, kind of sandblast grit that might be associated that could have been used as a base or something like that. And so, so we kind of have those areas in addition to the AOPC, plus on the western side of the island, because all the AOPCs are on the eastern part of the island. We were looking at some areas where there was some dredge material from the fish ladder dredging that was done. So kind of moving on to some figures here to kind of put this in perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in really quick just to make a quick clarification. So when Jay had said, that the SRI, this field work that he's going to go over is for the sandblast and landfill, but really specifically for the landfill, it's more associated with the groundwater and some small data gaps. The landfill itself is a part of the INTICRA.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. So, okay. So, so here's a large area, this is on Bradford Island itself, Cascades Islands here, the Upland OU areas over here. Then we got what we call West Bradford Island area over here. And kind of moving on from that to blow up that, we've got the 4 areas of potential concern. So this red outline here is the sandblast area. And then the green here is the bulb slope. It's kind of it's a little trickier to see with all the groundwater or without the land contours here, but this kind of yellowish orange outside outline here is the landfill AOPC, and then the purple over here is the former pistol range. And then moving over to the western side of the island, dredge material from the fish ladder. There's basically a large kind of mounded soil area that's right in here, and so we've done some soil sampling in this area, and I'll get into some of the details of the locations of that. So first up with the with the landfill AOPC, with the soil sampling that we've done, we basically did some soil sampling in December. We completed 3 soil borings down to about 5 feet around monitoring well MW10, which had some PCB concentrations that were detected in groundwater in some of the recent groundwater sampling. And so those soil samples were collected and analyzed for PCBs. So this is the landfill AOPC area here. And MW10 is right in here. In these red circles in this area here, these are the areas that we collected the soil samples and went down to about 5 feet. And then moving on to the groundwater investigation with the landfill AOPC. We're currently starting in on doing the groundwater monitoring well installation activities here the 1st of January with the plans to install 2 new groundwater monitoring wells that to evaluate, primarily to focus on what might be going on between MW10 and the landfill area. And so we'll be installing MW16 and MW17. And then collecting groundwater samples from there. We're going to collect 2 rounds of groundwater samples from the monitoring wells. The first round is going to include basically MW2 and 10, which are existing monitoring wells, and then the 2 new wells, MW16 and 17. And then a second round of groundwater samples will be collected from all the wells that are a part of the landfill AOPC. And that'll be approximately 6 months separated apart. So we'll be collecting groundwater samples here at the end of January once the wells go in, and then probably around June timeframe, we will be collecting the second round of groundwater samples. In addition, once we collect our first round of groundwater samples, we're going to put in these groundwater elevation transducers. And what these are, they're kind of, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically kind of a small meter monitoring type equipment that we can put into the monitoring wells, and it will continuously track the groundwater elevation as groundwater comes up and down, so we get a good handle which way groundwater is flowing and what the groundwater conditions are. And so basically those meters are, we'll be able to hook them up to a computer, you download all the data, and then we have a real solid set of data to see what groundwater elevations have been doing over the time that they're in there. The plan is to keep them in for about 12 months. Now, some of the wells, depending on what happens with the Antiqua, if those wells have to come out or not, those transducers may have to come out a little earlier. But the plan is overall is to try to keep those transducer in for approximately 12 months. So in addition to and I've got another figure here to kind of put this in perspective, but the groundwater monitoring well sampling, we're doing seep sampling. And so we have done 1 round of seep sampling here in December, and we did a seep survey and gone around the island looking for groundwater seeps that may be coming out of the sides of the Bradford Island itself, and with a plan to collect up to 10 seeps. Now I'll tell you, in December we were only identified 2 seep locations that were coming out, and so those seep samples were collected. We're going to collect another round of seep samples in probably around March timeframe. We wanted to spread them out as far as we could, like we would with the groundwater, but partly because of the timing with the dam operations there and the spillway being opened in April timeframe, we need to get out there and get that second round in March. And it'll be the same deal. We'll go around the island, look for seeps, collect up to 10 seeps. And then those both those groundwater and seep samples, they're being analyzed for volatile organic compounds or VOCs, PCBs, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which also known as PAHs, semi-volatile organic compounds, pesticides, herbicides, and metals. And then also out of some select well locations and also the seeps, we're collecting total petroleum hydrocarbons and butyltins for characterization purposes only. And then also we'll be collecting dissolved organic carbon in the second round of groundwater samples. So if there's a figure here to kind of put this in perspective here. So MW16's here, MW17. As far as the seep samples, we basically kind of went around the entire island all the way around to the Pistol Range area there, looking for seeps, and collected the seep samples there. But the two new monitoring wells that are going in here is 16 and 17, which MW10 is here. And obviously it's trying to get an understanding of what's going on between MW10 and the landfill itself. Okay, so moving on to the sandblast area AOPC. So like I said, we collected the soil samples in December. We basically completed 3 soil boring locations, 3 soil borings, and collected soil samples. The soil borings went down to about 15 feet, and that was in what is kind of called the erodible soil area. And probably better just to kind of skip to that so you can understand these. So the 3 locations are right here. Those are the 3, and this kind of general area is considered the erodible soil area as far as this the sandblast area. And then we've run those soils for volatile organic carbons, PCBs, PAHs, semi-volatiles, pesticides, herbicides, and metals. And then a select number of those soil samples were run for total petroleum hydrocarbons and butyltins for characterization. And then we also completed 14 shallow soil borings that went down to about 3 feet. And that was kind of in the kind of the southern part of the island that or the area there where the former hazardous material storage area is located. Primarily looking for PAHs and metals. And so these locations here, these circles here, are the locations. And this was to close out some data gaps. There had been some past sampling done in this area here, and it needed some additional characterization on these locations to determine the extent of contamination. And this is the former hazardous material storage area right here. Okay. Oops. I feel like I missed one. Yeah. And then, so we also completed 1 soil boring that down to about 15 feet. And that was in this area right here. This area here, and that was also run for basically kind of the full suite of analysis, the volatile organic carbons, PCBs, PAHs, semi-volatiles, pesticides, herbicides, and metals. And then select location samples were run for TPH and butyltins. And I think I forgot to mention the 2 soil borings that were done on the backside of the current hazardous material storage area. And we were looking there to kind of further define if there was any volatile organic compound contaminants on the backside here. This is the current hazardous material storage area, so we put in 2 soil borings here and here. So that was that was it with the sandblast area soil sampling, and then now we're moving forward with the groundwater monitoring well installation effort, and there we've got plans for 8 new monitoring wells. So to be MW18 through MW25 will be the new wells, which will marry up with the existing wells that are out there. And the groundwater samples will be collected, and we'll do the same that we did with the landfill with 2 rounds of groundwater samples. So we'll collect a first round at the end of January here, once all the wells are in, and then a second round in June timeframe. The round 1 will include just the new monitoring wells, and then round 2 is going to include the existing wells plus the new wells, and so those will go in. And then same as with the landfill, there's a select number of wells that we're going to install our groundwater monitoring well transducers to get an understanding of which way groundwater flow is going and get some good solid data over a 12-month period. And then those we'll be able to download that data to the computer and get, like I said, a solid understanding of what's going on with the groundwater flow directions. And then the groundwater analysis that will be running on MW 11 through 22, which is kind of in the primary area of this sandblast area here, will run for volatile organic compounds. And then MW 23 and 24 essentially be most of the full list, but it'll be volatile organic compounds, polyaromatic hydrocarbons or PAHs, semi-volatiles, and pesticides and metals, and then a second round with dissolved carbon. So this area here, these are the new wells, the ones that are in red. So 18's here, 19, 20, and then 21 is right here, and then 22 here. So those will be run for volatiles. And then as we go on the southern part of the sandblast area, we've got 3 additional wells. So we have MW 23 and 24, which will give us a good understanding of if there's anything flowing off of, coming off of the former hazardous material storage area and in this area here, and then MW 25, which gives us a good handle. Because if you have 3 wells, you can triangulate and get a good understanding of groundwater flow direction. So other than that, like I mentioned, we've got the road complex area, which is not designated as an area of potential concern, but we collected 4 surface soil samples down to 1 foot at the historical roads that are in that area there. And we also have a kind of a 5th area that kind of served double duty. It was collected as part of the landfill AOPC, and so it kind of has a dual purpose. And we're looking to see if there's any PCBs or metals that could have been spread out onto the road. So if you look closely here, you can see kind of this white line. These white lines are kind of the former roads that kind of cut through here that were historically used. And so we've got these triangle locations in red here are where collected the soil samples here. And then it's not really shown in here, but there was actually a soil sample that was collected as part of the soil boring right off of MW10, and that kind of is the one that serves the dual purpose. And then lastly, we've got the West Bradford Island area, and that was the area that we're looking to see if there's anything going on with the dredge materials from the fish ladder dredging that was done in the soil that was piled up there. So we've got 3 soil borings that are right on top of the soil pile itself, right in here, and then 11 I think it's 11. Yeah, oops. 11 surface soil samples around the edge of this pile, and kind of in an area where if there was anything flowing off the pile itself, it may settle down in these lower areas here. So these would be surface soil locations, the triangles and these soil borings here. We were trying to get down to about 20 feet with these 3 soil borings that are in here, and essentially running for the full suite, which is the volatile organic carbons, PCBs, the PAHs, semi-volatiles, pesticides, herbicides, and metals. And then same with the others. We also collected some soil samples for total petroleum hydrocarbons and butyltins for characterization purposes only. And so once all this data is collected, the wells are in, and we get the data collected, we'll run our laboratory analysis on it. The data has to be validated, so it goes through a validation process, and then we take all that, and there's some data management activities that have to happen. We kind of get all that together. We do a data review. We're going to have some meetings I know are going to be set up to do some evaluation meetings, and look at that. And then following with all that, we'll start in with the reporting, and the data for the SRI report will also be combined with the data that's going to be collected as part of the non-time critical removal action. And that's going to be all incorporated into one report. And so that'll be the SRI report itself. So with that said, questions?
Go ahead, Mitch.
Hey, this is
Mitch Patton has his hand
Okay.
up.
okay.
Yeah, let's let Mitch go, and then
So I was curious on the soil sampling that was done. Some were 3 foot, some were 5 foot, then others were 15 foot. What was the theory behind only going like 3 foot? Is it just you don't want to go any deeper because contamination could get taken deeper? You wanted to check to see if it was there. So I'm just trying to understand in an
Right.
area, I think it was in the sandblast area where there was some 3 foot holes.
Right. Yeah, and Gary, feel free to chime in here, but we're looking at kind of closing out some some past sampling that was done in this area, and looking at the depth and what the contaminants were. Some contaminants are more prone to go deeper. That may be part of it could have been in a like some of the volatile organic compounds could have been in with some type of material that would basically spread deeper itself. But in this area, we were looking at past samples that indicated there was some pH contaminants and metals that were spread from the surface itself, and so they would not have the tendency to go deeper. And so in this area here, we were just looking at really at 3 foot depths, and based on the historical samples, there really wasn't past data that showed that anything was deeper. Where other areas in the sandblast area, we would want to go deeper, and we're kind of going almost down, groundwater's not too much farther down, but we're collecting soil samples, so it gives you a good understanding of if there's anything down to a certain depth. Now, obviously, if there's something that is at a deeper depth, then there's a possibility you would have to look deeper, but we wouldn't suspect that there would be anything beyond that 15-foot depth that we had in there. So,
And so
Gary,
are you monitoring the ones that you call monitoring wells? Are they deeper? Are they what's the bottom depth of them?
Yeah, the monitoring wells are deeper, and Gary, you could probably speak the best to those monitoring well depths that we've got in there with the different zones.
Yeah, just to add to what you said, Jay, about the soil borings, it was part of it was based on previous data. In the hazardous material storage area, all the data suggested contamination was pretty shallow there, and it was contaminants that don't move very quickly, like metals and PAHs. So we thought 3 foot was deep enough, and that area. And in the other areas, it was kind of dependent on past data. In some places, we needed to go a little deeper. And like in the erodible soils area, we didn't have any kind of intermediate depth samples. So we were able to get those samples. And this will all kind of feed into the feasibility study and help us understand, you know, the extent of areas that may require some remediation. As far as the monitoring wells, yeah, there's kind of two sets of roughly calling them shallow and deep, but you know, there's some wells that'll be more like 20 or 30 feet, and they'll be above what's called the silt block, which we found. I was out there last week when we started the drilling for 3 days. It was pretty interesting, and we found this really actually quite pretty greenish, blue-greenish siltstone. It's a volcanic clastic siltstone, and so we're trying to create a network of wells above that, as well as some that are below that, into what's called the slide block. So, and those deeper ones right now are looking more like 40 to 60 feet. Like today, they were drilling down at MW21, which is the bottom of this current picture that Jay has on the Tower Road. And I think we bottomed out about 55 feet there and set a well there, and that's below the slide block. Where MW25 is a shallow well, and that, I think we finished that one something, I forget the exact depth, 20 or maybe 25 feet. So pretty much shallower above the slide block.
And the other thing that can happen too for like soil samples is that you can just hit a refusal where we just are unable to go any deeper. It's just the way that the geology is. So Gary, I don't know if there's any other.
Yeah, there's a lot of gravel and cobbles that we intersected while we were drilling a lot of the soil borings, and we had to move locations, and you know, several times, and you know, did the best we can to get to these depths, but they weren't always achievable.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to add. I had my hand raised, and I'm sorry. I'll move it on, but I was out there for some of that sampling, and I saw that they didn't get very far before they hit refusal, and there was nothing but gravel up underneath it. So, you know, when you have a piece of a mountain break off, most of that's rock, right? So, yeah, even if they did try to go deep, they really weren't able to. So, yeah.
There was somebody else talking when or was trying to chime in. Did everybody get their turn? Oh, hi, Pam.
Yeah, this is Pam. I had a question, and this may just be my ignorance because I couldn't find the email right before this meeting. Did we get any copy of those reports, or are we able to get reports or work plans or anything that you're working on?
So this is Megan. I'll take that question. In terms of the work plan itself, the work plan's not yet finalized. We are working on finalizing it now, but we've also gotten some indication from some of our regulatory and tribal partners that they may be looking to go into informal dispute over a couple of the comments that we haven't been able to resolve together. So that will take a little bit longer than usual to put out. So we unfortunately don't have that available yet for the public to view. In terms of reports for like when this data, oh, I see Jackie has her hand up. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Jackie talk because she's smarter than me.
No, I was just going to add that this is not the process we normally like to take, you know, with just the schedule that we are being held to, and with what potential disagreements that we do need to work through with all the parties. We felt that with what we did agree on, we could, you know, again execute. You know, our hope is that in the future we're getting ahead of it so that we're able to get that final work plan out on the admin record before we begin work, and we're not going under conditional approval, but we are allowed that allowance, but that's not our preferred way of doing it. So we just kind of a few different factors kind of had it turn out this way. But we're again trying to avoid that situation in the future.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, Jackie. And as Jackie pointed out, the work plan for the upland operable unit did receive conditional approval from EPA. So we didn't just kind of haul off with no input from folks. But we talked about that a little bit. I'll talk now about kind of what happens afterwards. So on the slide, you kind of see some of the steps here. Once we get our data in, we do go through a data validation process that's very important. And then we start going into this kind of phase of collecting all the data together, and then reviewing it, evaluating it, analyzing it, and then it's kind of starting to get put into more of like a reporting form.
Thank you for that. I am aware of the process of creating the reports. Whenever they're finalized, will they be shared with us? And will also the tribes concerns with the report be shared with us? The purpose of their pushback, or I don't know exactly how that's being handled with the conditional use from EPA.
So when
would love to know what's going on there.
Yeah, when we have our data kind of brought all together, it's been validated. We are able to give raw data out to the regulators and the tribes. Jackie, do you want to add to that real quick?
Yeah, I think what Pam's asking is that for like, and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, the question is whether they're going to be able to see like what those disagreements are. And so what'll happen is when we do finalize that document, we will also put another file on the admin record that will show what the comments were, those responses to comments, and like we did this during the phase 1 river work plan, and then there was a memo up front that said, here are the issues that we were not able to resolve within this document, and then everything else. So that will be documented and will be put on the administrative record to be transparent with what comments were and resolutions and anything that was not resolved.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
No, but Megan, I also will add that, a few of the RAB members that have been on a bit longer, I know that they've heard this discussion a bit more, but this is kind of another place to understand kind of when we say like, the CERCLA is a slow process, but deliberate process. So that's kind of where this will take it, where, okay, we're collecting data now, but we have data that has to be collected as part of the non-time critical, which won't be happening until a little bit later, and then being able to build the report so that there will be, a very decent amount of time. And like I said, I think talking about the overall schedule, I'll let Megan touch to that later in these slides when we get to it. But just another kind of reiteration of the CERCLA process kind of being slow but deliberate.
All right, so that takes us to the end of what we have for the upland operable unit. We can move on to talk about the river and other project updates. On the phase 1 of the supplemental remedial investigation for river, our last piece of data collection is coming up fairly soon. We'll be retrieving the sediment traps that have been out, and then we'll be starting to collect that data and then start through our validation process. On phase 2 of that work, the Corps has started to review the work plan that was put together. And then once our comments are in and back checked, we'll be able to get that out for a regulator and tribal review. The next slide, please. On the Cascades Island preliminary assessment, working to finalize that document, very close to that now. And basically same kind of update for the community involvement plan. Both of these got some additional comments when regulators and tribes are back checking those. And so we're just working to get those final bits and bobs incorporated appropriately. For the revised site management plan, we have made revisions based on the comments we got from regulators and tribes. We'll be looking to have a deeper discussion on that at the next RAB meeting. So what we're planning to do is to provide a copy of the site management plan out to RAB members in advance of the next RAB, so that folks have a little bit of time to review that, and we can have a meaningful discussion there at that March meeting. So we'll be looking to provide that at least 2 weeks before the meeting, hopefully a little bit earlier than that. And then I believe this is our last project update slide talking about community involvement. So we'll be touching base again next time regarding the poster displays, their locations in the visitor centers at Bonneville Dam. And as requested from the RAB, we'll be looking to make those as visible as possible. Resident Fisher advisory signs distribution, as you heard earlier, is continuing from our partners at Oregon Health Authority and the Washington Department of Health. Some signs have been put up around the Bonneville Dam complex as well, on bulletin boards and other areas. And our big update for this time is that we've started to update the Bradford Island webpage. So we have started those discussions and started going through those updates with our webmaster here in the core. And we do actually have quite a bit that we're looking to add to the webpage. So what we've decided to do was to do some incremental updates of this. So after we publish our first update to the webpage, you'll kind of see like a construction banner for a little while, and we'll continue adding pages and adding content until we're able to complete that.
Yeah, and to add on, one reason why folks aren't seeing changes yet is to, again, minimize kind of the disruption to the page. We're making changes on basically like a dummy page internally so that we can make sure it looks like we would like it to, or closer to. So then as we still are under construction, let's say, it's still at least usable and not just, kind of all over the place. So we're trying to do that. So there are updates being made. It's just not being published to the main website yet until we get a little bit further so that we can make sure it's still usable while we continue further updates.
Yeah, absolutely. And as part of that, we are also updating the design of the webpage too. Our web designer has some ideas for us to help this look a little more streamlined, be a little more digestible for folks. So I think that's the end of our project updates. Any questions from our RAB members regarding any of that information? Okay, we'll kick it back over to Jordan to talk about our upcoming meeting dates.
All right, thank you, Megan. At our last meeting, we had decided to hold bi-monthly meetings through July, and that we wanted to make sure we had at least 3 months out planned for meetings. So I want to make sure the committee is still good, or the board is still good with that plan of holding the March meeting, I believe, was going to be virtual, and then starting in May, do the hybrid. It is, Megan, am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. In May,
Okay.
we would be planning to have both an in-person and virtual options for folks.
Gotcha. Is there anybody on the board that would like to adjust that schedule?
Mitch has his hand up.
Oh, Mitch, go ahead.
I don't really want to adjust the schedule. I just had a question that, is there anything that we see coming down the road that would call to have these meetings in person as well? Or is it still pretty open as that there's not a whole lot of information coming back?
Not necessarily that information would drive us to meet in person sooner than May. But we do want to have an overview of the engineering evaluation cost analysis. And depending on when that document is finalized, we may recommend to have that as an ad hoc meeting. That wouldn't necessarily drive us to in person, though, for that particular meeting.
Okay. Well,
And I believe
I would make a motion to leave it as we have it. Then if there's nothing coming up that's pressing for people and maybe public to also be at the meeting, then doing it this way is probably fine.
Yeah, and I believe that March was still assumed to be virtual only because of potential weather concerns. That was really the driver.
yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. If ad hoc meeting is called, what kind of notification or time does the board need? Would we be able to schedule something within 2 or 3 business days, or do you need a week or 2 weeks to just to give Megan and her crew an idea of scheduling timeline? I guess personally for me, I'd like it like a week's notice, but
Megan, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Oh, no, I believe that was a question for the RAB members to provide feedback to the core on how much time they would like.
Yeah,
before we-
and that's just helping, I think, just, with what minimums are. Obviously, we will try to coordinate as far in advance as we can. But this is just, what do folks need as a minimum?
I like the week idea.
I think a week would work great for me. Do we see any need for perhaps like an emergency meeting where it would need to be a really quick turnaround, or is this more just for, as Jordan mentioned, just like ad hoc meeting?
This would be ad hoc, not an emergency level of meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, I think a week would work for me.
Okay, great. We can definitely hold to a week's notice for sure. And we'll, like Jackie said, we'll try to make it sooner than that as well.
perfect. Thank you.
I have a quick piece for potential topics, if it's okay to start on that now.
Yes, I was just going to ask.
Great. So we just talked about the engineering evaluation cost analysis as potential ad hoc. We'll be able to check in on that with RAB members as soon as possible, really. The other 2 items that we have for recommended topics coming up for March would be going over the revised site management plan and having RAB member nomination and voting. And that would be for basically open nomination period for any folks who want to renominate themselves for a second term.
And you want to do that in the March meeting?
Yeah, that would be our recommendation from the core.
Okay.
Are there any other topics from the RAB that folks would be looking to maybe have in the coming meetings? I see Mitch
Hi,
has
this
his hand
is
up.
Pam. I don't have any final comments for that topic, but I do have something that I want to make clear before the end of the meeting. So I just wanted to point that out before we conclude.
Sure. We'll have a RAB discussion next. That'd be a perfect place for that.
Great, thank you.
Mitch, go ahead.
Until right now, of course, but I did have a couple things bring up, but it's probably not going to work. 'Cause I think my internet's I can only hear about it. Same thing. So
Yeah, Mitch, I do hear you breaking up on my side. I do have a couple questions that I received from you from email, and I'll go over that during the RAB discussion.
okay.
And of course, that'll be captured in the recording and the minutes. And then anything else.
To let you guys
that
know,
we're not
I'm
able-
here, but
Okay. All right, Mitch. Yeah, we're hearing a little bit of what you say. We'll do our best as we can with it. Sounds like we can go ahead to the next slide.
Okay, Mitch has his hand up again.
Mitch, if you can hear us, go ahead. Okay, I think he's maybe not it sounds like he's not getting good audio from us. Kelly and Lisa, can you let him know that he can try to go ahead and speak through the chat? Oh, I see Rich or just messaged in there.
Yeah. So the other thing is maybe he could hang up and call back.
Yeah, I'm not hearing your audio, Mitch, if you're talking, but I think it was Pam, were you the other person that wanted to add some stuff during discussion? Or that might have been one of our other.
You had mentioned that I would speak when the RAB members give updates. I'm happy to say now, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands I'm no longer a port commissioner.
All right.
I think I saw that listed that I was representing the port, and I just want to make clear I'm not any longer.
Gotcha. Okay. If there's another affiliation you'd like us to list, if you can bump it into the chat, we can record that. And we can, if you need time to think about that, we can always do it in advance of the next RAB meeting too. But thanks for letting us know about that.
Sure.
Okay, I'm seeing Mitch is still on in hopes that he will be able to hear me. I did receive 2 emails from him since the last RAB meeting that he had asked we address at today's meeting. So I'll start in with those for RAB discussion. So number 1 was Mitch had noted that he saw some in-water work happening around the second powerhouse sometime around the end of December, and was asking if I knew if this was routine maintenance or related to the Bradford Island cleanup. While I can't be totally sure of what the work was that he saw, I did want to note that we did have some in-water work happening this past December, and that was the seep sampling that Jay Wilburn was talking about a little bit earlier. It's conducted by boat, and then they investigate the island for water coming out basically in the sides and take collections of that water where possible. So there was that happening for Bradford.
Yeah, that was on the 16th and 17th of December. So when he says end of December, that we'll just, I think we're going to need that clarification to better answer that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise there is regular like boat patrols and stuff like that. So that's another possibility, which would just be like routine operations. The second question was, it was a question of whether herbicides were being used around the landfill area or in other areas of Bonneville. So there hasn't been any spraying of herbicides in the landfill area of potential concern. Herbicides are used around Bonneville. They are used in industrial areas. Typically, they use it to clear out poison oak is the main concern around Bonneville. So it would be work areas. There's no, besides our circular work, there's no industrial, there's like not industrial work happening around the landfill itself. So there would be no particular need for that. And I did want to note that there are area restrictions for certain herbicides. So herbicides have particular restrictions when the spraying would be conducted near water. But otherwise, spraying of herbicides is allowed under restrictions of federal facilities. And then, of course, one note is that while we do have certain areas under our CERCLA investigation, it's not like the whole dam is not under a CERCLA investigation. We have Cascades Island, we have certain areas of Bradford. But where we're seeing the herbicide spraying would be like kind of light industrial or kind of where industrial areas are right up against like, a small grass patch, something like that. So that was just a little clarification there. I also received some questions and comments from our member Valerie Hoy, but I wanted to go ahead and open it up for other members to have an opportunity to speak during RAB discussion as well. So I'll open it up for other questions, comments from our RAB members. Mitch, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll see if maybe reconnecting helped. But I was gonna bring up, I spoke with the city of North Bonneville, and I also spoke with the port commissioners and seeing if they would entertain the idea of holding some RAB meetings at North Bonneville and then also at the port, and seeing if that's something that we could discuss further down the road.
So real quick, as others are considering that, Valerie Hoy actually had a related comment, and I'll go ahead and verbalize that now so we can kind of talk about alternate locations for meetings. So Valerie had written in, how do we as the RAB reach out to more local residents on both sides of the Columbia River? When I speak to folks locally here in Stevenson, no one even knows this is a NPL Superfund site. I believe we should hold meetings in multiple jurisdictions and invite the public to become more knowledgeable about the process and participate. So Valerie has also expressed interest in having RAB meetings held at other locations in the future. So let's open it up for the RAB to discuss.
I think that's a great idea. I don't know if you want to take suggestions now for locations, but I do have a few in mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Sophia.
I think that the Hagewald Center would also be a really good one. And I know that the Gorge Commission has met there before. So I know that they do have, you can have a setup for mics and video and all of that to consider. And then I know that the libraries would probably also be a great place. Stevenson and White Salmon, if that would be, I don't know if that would be too far, but White Salmon is also a really good location to have a meeting at.
It's Mitch again. I would say too, even if we further come downstream to like the city of Washougal type of deal, then on the opposite side of the river, I don't know if there's any places on that Oregon side coming down clear until you get to Troutdale, and that's probably getting to be kind of a big monster to try to get into, hold meetings in Troutdale. And I don't know if it'd be that effective in Troutdale, but the smaller communities on the Washington side, they're affected because they're so much closer to the site. It seems like it'd be good to try and reach out to them and see if they would entertain the idea as well.
Yeah, I think another good location would be the Washougal Port too. I know they have a good meeting space as well there.
Yep. I've already spoken that that's supposed to be on their minutes tonight, or they're on their agenda tonight at North Bonneville. I didn't have time to get into that meeting, and then also Pat Albaugh at the port, he also said he would run it past their board as well to see if they would hold something there. So I'll have to wait till next week or something, I'm assuming, to hear back from these other guys.
Well, great. Thank you, Mitch and Sophia, for your suggestions. We still have Jordan and Jennifer on the line. Any input from either of you? Or other thoughts?
I don't, I mean, other than I think it's great to, have other communities host it, just to get it out to more people. I know for me, even though I'm right next to the Bridge of the Gods, I really don't want to cross it. I don't want to pay that toll. I mean, it's $1.50, but I still don't want to pay it. So I don't know if that hinders anybody else, but it is there.
I don't have any issues with either side. I'm coming in from Portland, Vancouver area, so either will work.
Okay. Well, great. It sounds like this is of general interest to all the RAB members in attendance. So from the core side, we can start looking into these different locations that have been suggested and see what we'd be looking at for, just our technical requirements, and then, what it would be to get us out there for future hybrid meetings. So I can take this as an action to present a status at our next meeting. Kelly or Lisa, if you could note that down, please, that'd be great.
And if you could write some of those in the chat, unless Megan, you think you got all of them. It was hard to hear some of the suggestions.
The one that I'm not sure I spelled correctly, I think I heard Hagel Waltz Center. So Sophia, if you could write that in the chat, that would be very appreciated. And otherwise, I was able to capture everything.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sophia.
Oh yeah, I definitely spelled that wrong. So thank you very much. Great. Okay. So let's open it back up for other RAB discussion from our members present.
This is Pam. I don't have anything to add. Thanks.
All right. I'm not seeing any other comments in the chat or hands. So there's a couple other items that Valerie asked me to read into the meeting tonight. So I'll go ahead with those. Her first comment was, the site visit this past summer helped greatly in understanding the upland operable unit area that is currently being investigated. Thank you. And then she had two questions that were related. I think we've mostly sort of answered these two, at least to a degree. So the first question was, when will the sample results from December 2024 be available to the RAB? The second question was, after the monitoring wells are installed, how soon will data be available to the RAB? I believe December 2024 results she's speaking of is also upland operable unit data that we've been collecting. So for both of those, they're going to need to go through that process of validating, going through kind of reporting mechanisms, analyzing the data. After the regulators and tribes have had an opportunity to go over those data results with us. At that point afterwards, we would be doing a presentation to the RAB about, in general, like what kind of findings we had. Mitch, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm late for the RAB discussion, but I just going back through my notes and I stumbled across this one. And we'll just go ahead and ask it if it's something that we can't discuss in the next meeting or something, then that's fine. But I was wondering, looking at the maps of up there, the new locks that they put in, and when they dug those locks out, is that how the Strawberry Island or whatever that is, it's way upstream there by the park, did that come from there?
Goose Island was
Goose,
formed
yeah.
from the dredges of that newer navigation lock. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the
being
question. It's kind of,
investigated is. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
had a two-part question on that. Really, is I thought that's what I'd heard earlier, that that's where the majority of that material came from, and so, but then that brings me back to: is it a because we have the PCBs that are so high in that upper dam pool, clear up to there? Is it possible that that area at one point was a waste dump for the sandblast type stuff and for Bonneville Dam altogether in that area before they dredged that out for the new locks? And that's how the contamination got so far upstream.
So your question is it possible that correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I'm hearing you ask is whether it's possible that Goose Island was also partially formed of other waste disposal. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out, but I've asked this several times and nobody's really been able to answer it. And that's, where did Army Corps, BPA store their waste for so many years before Hamilton Island come into play? And so then I got to thinking, looking at the map and then thinking up about, okay, Goose Island, and now we have PCBs way up above Bonneville Dam in the river. So I'm going like, I wonder if that new locks and placed up there, and that's why we have the contamination so far upriver now.
Yeah, so in terms of Goose Island, we know that was formed out of the navigation dredge. We have no indication that there was ever any sort of placement of waste in the river in that area. The historical areas that we do know are the landfill, the sandblast area, those areas that we talk about regularly.
But didn't
And
the
Goose
new
Island and Goose Island will be investigated as part of the upcoming river operable unit SRI work.
but where the new locks are, the new locks themselves, wasn't that land that they blew out and put the locks in there, or was there actually a canal waterway there in the first place? I thought it was land.
Yeah, it was land it was like dredged out.
Yeah. And so that's what I said. That's when I got to thinking, well, it all kind of makes sense that it's a possibility that that landmass that was there when they blew it up and dredged it out and dug it out and hauled it upriver, that there could have been contamination there. And that's how it got upstream so far.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just an idea that like I said, I was looking going like, how in the world did this stuff get up there so far? How do we have PCBs clear up there? And the only thing I can come up with is it come out of that locks.
So, and so when you say upstream, all the way upstream, where specifically are you?
Up there at the Goose Island, which is the one that's up by the park, correct? If I'm talking about the right island.
Yeah, right. And that's what I said. And we know that material was placed there from the islands. But again, when that I said I'm just trying to orient myself with the map, but yeah. So I mean, we know that potential contaminated material was placed at Goose Island, and like I said, we identify that. That's definitely a data gap, and we need to understand. And I shouldn't say potential. I mean, I think that again, there's been data around Goose Island, but again, our investigation when we do the river is to actually sample on Goose Island, not just that sediment that's surrounding it, so we can have a better idea of what material has been placed there and what that looks like.
Right. And it was, like I said, it was just something that I've been kind of scratching my head on, trying to figure out how we got contaminated so far upriver. And the only thing that I've ever been able to come up with is that scenario, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. It's still something that I think needs to be further discussion and to be looked at.
Yeah, and that's what I'm just trying to get clarification when you say, because like I said, we have identified that we are going to investigate that area. If there's anything further, we do know there are other sources upriver that are not related to Bradford Island. Again, what their I'm not aware of what their contaminants or their contribution are, but there's lots of different stuff all the way up the river. So that's why I wanted to make sure I understood what you had meant by upstream, because there's only a certain point that we feel is, right now with where we're investigating and feel that we know material was placed and needs to be investigated.
Then it kind of falls back what I still have not been able to get my hands on older aerial photos back, in the 50s and 60s of this area to see. I guess they're not available. But I just wanted to bring that up, and like I said, either for down the road discussion, but at least it's been brought up and noted now. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, Mitch. We've covered all of the questions and comments that Valerie had asked me to bring to the RAB. Are there any additional notes for RAB discussion from our RAB members? Okay, we can move on to public open forum for any questions, comments from our public members. All right, not seeing any comments, not seeing any hands. Jordan, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
All right, thank you. Did we open it up to any non-voting RAB members for any comments?
I did not specifically ask non-voting RAB members.
Okay, so I want to make sure. I'm sure they all would have chimed in if they wanted to, but I wanted to double check. But I think at that point, that's all we have, and we can, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sorry to interrupt, Jordan. I see Dina Horton asked, will you hold meetings in the Portland area?
Oh, yeah, good catch.
Following conversation. From the core side, we can certainly look into that. Are there members of the public or members of the RAB that would be interested in having RAB meetings at the Portland area?
This is Jennifer. I would.
Yeah, I live out there, so yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay.
Like a great idea.
This is Pam. As long as it's not every single meeting, I'm willing to travel every once in a while.
Sure. Okay. I'll add that to my notes. And I see that Dina said Portland or Vancouver. I'm guessing if Portland's of interest, Vancouver is also of interest. All right. Thanks for that comment, Dina. Jordan, I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for catching that. My apologies there, Dina. All right. Now, unless there's any more comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any debate? Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right, perfect. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned. We will see you virtually in March.